I'm Beldan Sezen. I'm an artist. I make artist books and I do comics here and there. I also work as a curator for artist books with Brooklyn, who are based in Brooklyn. I live in Brooklyn since 2018 officially. I'm originally from Germany. I'm German-Turkish, I'm born and raised in Germany. My parents are Turkish. It was always comics for me since I was little, and my father is a printer, not unlike you guys. So there were always paper scraps at home, right? And so we could always draw. I didn't know, like comics, right? And for example, in Turkey, comics has a long tradition, like political comics. Like there are weekly cartoon magazines who are very satirical and very brutal. So my grandmother would also always send us comics, the weekly comics. Back then in Germany, there was hardly a the Turkish community was very small, like immigrant workers. So she would send us the weekly newspapers, and there was always comics and cartoons in there. Most of the time it was like Turkish cartoons and American cartoons. So I grew up with old-fashioned Sundays. So comics was always a thing to do, and I loved it, and I started drawing very early. After some while, I studied political sciences. And when I finished, when I got my master's, I already had moved to Amsterdam. So then for me, it was like, what I'm gonna do now? I was like, I'm gonna make cartoons and comics. So that's how it started. I started my first book about a young lesbian woman who's very full of herself and who investigates the murder of her aunt in Turkey. So strangely, for me, it first got exhibitioned in a museum. Like the whole book was a walkthrough book in Germany, in Wiesbaden, at the Women's Museum. And then it got picked up by a publisher in London, Treehouse Press. So Adam found me on Twitter. By then, when I think 2016 or something like that, I can't quite recall it, I did my first what I would call comic reportage, comic as eyewitness. I was in Amsterdam, things were happening in Istanbul and in Turkey, and I don't know if I can translate that feeling. So you are, or let's say it like this, I am Turkish, something happens in a country I'm emotionally attached to, but you're in a different place, you're in Amsterdam. So no matter how much people are understanding or empathizing with you, it's not quite the same. And I felt quite helpless in that moment. You can go to demonstrations, but it's still like, what to do with all that. And in that moment, art or comics is a great way to just do something or anything. So I did a short story called Gezi Park, and I self-published it just to get it out. So from that, there was some presence about me, it seems, and Adam found me and sent me a message on Twitter if I'm interested to work with him. He was looking for someone, a comic artist, to do a story on what was happening on mining in Turkey. And I was one of, I think, 6 stories in total. And that's how it started with Adam. From this first story with the mining project story, Adam asked me another time to join him for a story in Manipur, in northeast India, to fly. We flew to India, to Manipur, to gather information there. He was working in his capacity for frontline defenders. And I was accompanying him to see if I can make a story afterwards. It just clicked, I guess. And then when COVID happened, he was like, hey, I have this idea about I want to do a comic magazine, online comic magazine. Are you interested in that? I was like, yeah. And we were thinking about the name, and then Cypher came up, because even though we are from different worlds, hip hop was always a big deal for us, both of us, in different variations, the old school hip hop and rap. So he was like Cypher, and I didn't know the term Cypher. It was like, no, Cypher is when you come together in the hip hop world and from different disciplines, and you rap together, you do things together. And we were like, oh yeah, that's perfect. That's what we want to do. We want to gather people from different worlds to tell stories about human rights. Because most of the time we are kind of like, isolated in that sense. There's the world of human rights defenders, there's the world of comic. But what if we come together and use all our talents and crafts to say something that might be valuable for others, or to look at things in a different way. So that's how Cypher started. I was aware about you since I worked with Brooklyn. So I knew about Radix Media. I did not know it as well as I know you now. But when we were looking for suitable publishers, you were kind of one of the first one that came to my mind. I like that you're worker owned, you know, that's a big thing, and I like what you're doing. When we were starting, we brainstormed, like that is also another thing, the way we work, and in 2020, we published a copy, like an issue per month. So we worked very quick, very fast. So when we met, I don't know, I was like, okay, what do you want to say? And he was, of course, in the human rights defenders world. So he was like, okay, there's stories here and there. What do you think about this and this? And I was like, okay, that sounds like a good fit. And Frontline Defenders has, how do you say that? Has people in the region. So it's region-based. So there's a contact in every region, and we would reach out to them and say, like, you know, we're interested. Do you have someone who would like to work? Do you know an artist who would like to work with this human rights defenders? Like, it's basically listening for the artists, right? And not trying to put their own stuff in it. And as far as I can say that how artists work, often or how I work. So you tell me your story, right? And in my mind, it translates into images. But it's your last word to say if this is the way you want to do it. So we try to find artists from the region who speaks the language or has an affinity with the language, so that goes smoothly. Or if not, we provide a translator. Most of the time we met all of us, like the artist, the human rights defender, me and Adam. And if it's a language that we don't speak, it works, it always works. Either we use Google Translate or we try, you know. I never had a situation that we weren't able to communicate. The advantages of comics are, in my opinion, I mean, it's human rights, right? Never easy. What you will hear most of the time, because we deal with either people who are disappeared or who have been incarcerated or have experienced violence in different levels or are in hiding. When we were publishing stories or considering stories, we had to take account, is the human rights defender's life in danger if we publish? Or how can we protect them? How can we protect the artists? We did one story on Hong Kong, back when it was still Hong Kong independently. So indeed, sometimes artists use pseudonyms as their name or stay anonymous to protect them. Sometimes we can't publish the story because of, the story was ready. Let's say Cypher number 17, we had a story for human rights defender in Belarus. We couldn't publish it because the life was in danger in that moment. Then we had a story about the human rights defenders, which is also in the anthology from Armenia. The moment the artist started drawing with the human rights defender, the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan erupted. So both of them were not available, so I had a couple of images and I put them together. So we do that too, right? Just because for us, it's not so much about the finished story or that the story looks great. I mean, it should look great, of course. It should be a comic or, but to get the story out. And sometimes it's like that. This is the world we live in. A war can erupt, but the story is still there, and the story still has to be told because it is important, because often human rights defenders are not the people in power. Most of the time, in this case, Lara, she worked on women's rights and LGBTI rights in a society that is not very open for that, or, So yeah, I would like to tell her story, no matter what. Comics allows that things happen, like it happens in between frames, right? That's Scott McCloud's thing. So I can draw a gun and I can draw a body that is harmed by a gun, but I never have to pull the trigger. It's you, the reader, who does that actually. And that is the connection that comics allows us to do. And that is great because in that way you're involved, you're part of the cipher, right? As a reader. And that's what I like with comics. Comics can be done everywhere at any time. You do not have to have a computer. All you need is pencil and paper, right? And if you can't draw, you can do stick figures. If you can't do that, you can do collage, whatever. Cypher was never meant to be, we we tell these stories and you have all the details, all the information. It's kind of quote unquote light in that sense. But it's meant as an entrance, as an entree, as a starting point. If you want to know more, go dig, or use it as research material, find more about that person, follow that person we're talking about. Even if you just read it and do nothing else, you know that this story exists. Even if that story is just in that book in some library, now the story exists. And that's my main thing. Whatever the people do with it, however they want to work, is beyond my capacity and it's not my interest. So together with Radix, we did volume 1. We are many, and we hope we can publish 2 more in the future. But also Cypher will continue. So right now, the online version, we hope to publish the next issue in January. And we will focus on, if everything goes well, on, again, Belarus, and on Puerto Rico. The aftermath of Hurricane Rosa. And if we will manage on Maui, what's happening there. Then we also work on a longer traject with La Resistencia. So that will be a special issue probably. And let's see what comes out, in the future.